Let us pray. Lord, we ask your blessings upon this meeting today. We thank you for giving us this beautiful day and to be able to live in this country where we can gather together like we are today and take care of the affairs of our college. We ask your blessings upon these proceedings. Please give us the guidance and wisdom that we need to do the right thing. We also ask your blessings upon this college, our students especially, our administrators, our faculty, our career staff. Please guide them all as they go about their duties. We ask all this in thy holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Thank you all very much for being with us this morning. Dr. Furlong, I believe we have some retirement
We do.
resolutions.
Phil Nicatier, are you here? Would you bring your group forward? Margaret Carter.
Well, it certainly is my pleasure to say goodbye and to wish Peggy a new life with her retirement. For the past, several months, Peggy kept saying to me, I'm thinking about retiring. And I kept saying to myself, no, she's not. No, she's not. But I guess I was wrong because we're here today to send her off into her retirement. But just a couple of things I want to say about Peggy. Number one is she's been with the college for more than 18 years. Always been with health. Started out at Allstate with the continuing education for the EMS program. And then the rest, after they moved to HEC, she has done and worked with every program at HEC. And we're really going to miss that experience that she has. Two important things, and then I'll end here. Number one is we're going to miss her attitude. Peggy never says, well, I don't think we can do that. She always turned around to me and said, when do you want it done? And I'm going to miss that tremendously. And the second thing is, she is one of the kindest, most caring individuals I've ever met. For everyone that she worked with, as well as the students that she came in contact with. So we're going to miss you, and we thank you for all your years of service.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming here today to share in this moment with me. I've made a lot of friends in my lifetime here at the college, and I know I'm going to miss them. I hope and I pray that in my retirement, when you look back on this time, you will remember and think of me with a good imprint in your life. I will miss all of you. Thank you all for taking this time to be here with me today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the board,
And Deborah Sue Slavin.
This is just a small representation of Sue Slavin's Library Fan Club. Many of her other members of the fan club have already retired, so it's really with sadness that I say goodbye to Sue today. This is her 31st year at the college, 31 years with the library. She started as a student at SPJC and a student assistant in the libraries. She received her AA and has been a library paraprofessional with us, which is just the position just below professional librarian. And Sue has the unique distinction of having worked at every single one of our SPC libraries. every single one. She never made it to downtown, but we don't have a library there yet. So it's really cool that Sue's brother came in from out of town for this, and we wish her all the best and a happy retirement. We'll miss you.
Thank you.
Sue.
It's been a wonderful, wonderful ride for the 30 years. Best thing that ever happened to me was coming back to school as an adult student and picking St. Pete Junior College. And I just can't thank everybody enough. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful time. It's a great place. I'm very, very proud to have worked here all these years, and I always will be.
41 years. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have Carolyn Kistner, her entourage. You're gonna? Yes.
Good morning.
Come stand here.
Carolyn Kistner has been and continues to be blessed with a warm heart and a warm spirit. And she expresses that daily through that smile right here and through the gleam and sparkle in her eyes. And I have not seen in the last 2 years since I've been at Tarpon Springs her one day without that smile and that gleam. And she's a math teacher. She's been blessed with a beautiful mind, teaching analytic geometry and calculus. And her students love her. And I just want to thank you, Carolyn, for your dedication to our students and to our campus and to our college. And I thank you so much for that warm heart and spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carney, for giving me a chance. Carolyn has not only been a wonderful colleague, she's been a dear friend to all of us. She is one of the most giving spirits that you will ever find. Her family also has been giving to the college. They gave her father's butterfly collection, which was a huge exhibit, I think 60,000 pieces or something. But they've come from University of Florida to look at it. Just gorgeous, and it sits in our library. Yay, library people. But I just have to tell you that it's been a blessing to work with Carolyn. She's been with us since 1992, and the Clearwater campus came to the Tarpon campus about 3 years later, and it was one of the greatest blessings Tarpon ever had. So thank you all for your blessings, and thank you, Carolyn. We love you.
Thank you. No. Okay. And I just want to thank everyone for coming. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed my time at the college, and I've enjoyed it so much that I've gone back and I'm teaching 2 express classes now. So you can't get rid of me completely. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one employee to introduce. Should I do that, Rob?
Please, please.
Jim Oliver.
Thank you, Dr. Furlong, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet, board packet, or perhaps in a separate mailing on Friday, you should have received a couple of documents related to entrepreneurship education and a couple of initiatives that we're launching at the college. One, a curricular, where we're going to be proposing a new track in the AS program in entrepreneurship, and I think more exciting, a focused, practical 4-course certificate for budding entrepreneurs. Also, we're morphing our career center to become a career and entrepreneurship center to complement the curriculum with the activities and mentoring and networking and activities to support the curriculum. This morning, Dean Setterland and I are here, Dean of Business, to introduce Nicole Panuthos, Professor Panuthos. She is the new business chair at Seminole and eCampus. She has her MBA from USF in entrepreneurship has worked in corporate America, has started and run her own business, and has taught for eCampus for several years. She'll be spearheading the creation of that curriculum. And we think that that, together with the support from the center, not only will give greater opportunities for our students, especially as we articulate with corporate training and with the four-year program in entrepreneurship, but can leverage the resources throughout the county in entrepreneurship education in a really creative way for the college.
Great.
So, Professor Panuthas.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Very nice to meet you. Mr. Chair, I move approval of the retirement resolutions and wish our folks well.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On to item 5, approval of the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Terry. On the minutes, I think we had a very nice discussion, a frank discussion about the motion concerning the acquisition of the property by the foundation. And one of the things that we requested as part of the minutes, in the minutes, is that there be some type of review process in the future to prevent this from happening again. And can we just get an update, Dr. Furlong, as to what the activities and when we will get some type of process?
Definitely, and there's been several things that have happened, and Suzanne, I think, is prepared to talk about it a little bit.
I can provide an update. As a response to that request, the General Counsel did meet with the Foundation's director, Mr. Paul Hanna, and decided that General Counsel will be represented at the Foundation meetings, that the General Counsel will review the minutes and agenda of the Foundation for those meetings, and that the General Counsel's office will review all contracts for the purchase of property and facilities.
And,
moving forward.
Obviously, that's going to be in our minutes, and I think that's a good response to prevent what happened before from happening again. On that particular issue, do we know that, I know that the college facility staff did work on that house. Did the foundation pay for that work to the college?
That I'm not sure.
Susan's got that. Or Paul. Paul.
Yes, the foundation.
How much are we talking about?
The price of the house was $115,000. The total was $204,000 and change. So the difference is what the foundation.
So all the renovation cost was paid for by the foundation?
Yes, sir.
And the upkeep, the Susan's office bills does it, but she bills the foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Brett.
Okay, great. On to item number 7, report of new business. I was going to flip these two around here, but, oh, here he is, Mr. Gibbons, great. I would like to go ahead and do that. Probably have a brief discussion on the presidential search process. So I think let's just flip those two. Ms. Janish is here, and that way we can talk about the president's contract now, and then once we're finished with that, she can be excused, and we can move on to the presidential search process. So, Mr. Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to reintroduce to you Tracy Janish. Tracy is the managing partner of Ford & Harrison in the Tampa office. Tracy has appeared before you in the past and has brought to you the memorandum that has been prepared under her direction by Ford & Harrison. She's going to present her memorandum and briefly and kind of synopsize where we're at.
Okay, great.
We reviewed state statutes and board rules going all the way back to the 80s. It's a complex interaction of statutes that have evolved and changed over time. And although not explicitly limited, it was our position, as set out in the memorandum, that the president of a community college is limited in terminal pay, both sick and vacation pay, to the terminal pay that's permissible to any other regular full-time employee of the college. And so our recommendation is that the terminal pay to Dr. Cutler be limited to the same terminal pay as relates to sick leave and vacation pay as any other regular full-time college employee. As set out in the memorandum, that limitation, as per Florida statutes and the current board rules, is 720 hours of sick terminal pay and 500 hours of vacation pay. Dr. Cutler had less than 500 hours of vacation pay. He had 336.23 hours of vacation pay, which it's our understanding has already been paid out under the formula set out by the board rules and the statute. The 90 days of sick leave, 720 hours, should be paid out under the formula set out by Florida statutes and board rules. That amount is in your memorandum, but the formula is based on 720 hours times the then hourly rate of pay times a particular amount that again is set out in the memorandum and by statute. There were deposits made prior to 2001 based on an assertion of 2104 hours of sick leave. That amount has been audited by the accountants, as I understand it, and the accountants have determined that that amount, in fact, was accrued, and no additional accrual was permitted after 2001 of sick pay. However, it's our determination that the statutes and the board rules cap that amount to a lower amount of 720 hours. Based on the board's belief at the time that the contract and the law authorized that accrual, we've advised the board that it is a permissible option to offset those amounts with terminal pay to Dr. Cutler over and above the benefits of sick and vacation pay with up to 1 year of salary. We believe that that would resolve all disputes as to the deposited amounts, as well as provide Dr. Cutler with 1 year of terminal pay as permitted under the Florida statutes.
Thank you. Mr. Lang, anything to add?
No, I have, of course, read the memorandum. I think it was very well prepared, very well thought out, and I think I subscribe to her suggestions.
Discussion? Questions? Anyone want to entertain a motion? Mr. Burke.
And I will, since we're among all these academic people, and plagiarism is always an issue, I will say that this is highly plagiarized. Not only plagiarized, it's written for me by Ford and Harrison, which I certainly appreciate, because I asked for a recommendation how to legally put this motion down into the recommendation which is given to us by legal counsel. And I want to mention Ford and Harrison, their main practice of law is labor law. And I certainly appreciate the memorandum. I think you were very clear in the memorandum. You analyzed each section of the contract very well, let us know what our options are. You also made yourself and Mr. Lang available for the appointments. I had an hour-and-a-half appointment. I think it lasted till my meter ran out with you last Friday, and I certainly appreciate that opportunity to ask any questions I had on this and get the review of your memorandum. And I think as a board, we may have fumbled the ball a little in the beginning, but I think we've done well in recovering here as far as handling this process in a way which is very professional and I think meets board standards. And so based on that, I'm going to go ahead and make this motion and to reflect the gratitude of St. Petersburg College and the entire Pinellas County community to Dr. Cutler for 32 years of outstanding and nationally recognized service as president of St. Petersburg College, and as provided for Dr. Cutler's employment contract with the board by Florida Statute 100164, 1012.865, subsection 2, subsection E, subsection 1, and 1012.832, and to resolve the differences of opinion and claims as to Dr. Cutler's entitlement, I move to authorize the payment of $135,088 in terminal sick leave pay to Dr. Cutler in conjunction with the monies previously deposited as termination payment, which payment shall be conditioned, and this is very important, upon the execution of a mutual release between Dr. Cutler and St. Petersburg College.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Terry.
Mr. Burke.
Mr. Lang, and I know this is awkward, any contract negotiations or terminal and post-contract negotiations are always sensitive, but is it your understanding that Dr. Cutler is in agreement to this, and this represents full payment and that a release would be signed?
Yes, Mr. Burke. I went over this with Dr. Cutler earlier, the end of last week, and he called me Sunday night, and said that I could represent, that he would accept this.
Any other discussion? Mr. Gibbons.
I'd just like to commend our council and the folks at Ford and Harrison Tracy. I think you guys did an excellent job, along with Joe Lang and his firm. I think I would agree with Mr. Burt. In the beginning, I think we didn't know what to do, but we clearly got competent counsel to point us in the right direction. So I'm very confident with where we're going with this amendment this morning.
Mr. Johnson.
I know this has been a tough run on all of us, and especially to go back through the contract that's been amended and amended and amended and revised, and then to bring it in compliance with state law, because I don't think any of us ever knew that we were not in compliance with state law at any one time. So I think this is has worked out to be a very, very satisfactory, I think, on all parties' part. We certainly want to wish Dr. Cutler well after 32 years at the helm, because we all have enjoyed the benefit of his 24/7 working habits. Just the building we're sitting in is kind of world-renowned, and he's taken us to places that I never dreamed this college could go. And I think just a lot of credit is due to him, but he's also had an excellent staff that have worked with him to get us to this point. So, but a lot of kudos to Dr. Cutler, and I hope this is satisfactory to him as it is to the board, that we put this issue to rest and move on.
Ms. Bilirakis, I'm hoping you're on the line. Do you have any questions or
Yeah,
comments?
I'm on the line. I agree with everything that was said. Dr. Cutler deserves all the credit in the world for bringing our college to where it is now, and he deserves every bit of what we're giving him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? We'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Burke.
Obviously, I think when the board looked at this whole issue, we have to look and see how we can treat it as a learning experience too for the future. And so I'm looking at some of the weaknesses in our process, and would ask that the staff, Dr. Furlong, come back in conjunction with council with a recommendation on how we need to put procedures into effect to avoid this from happening again. And there's certain items that I would like to mention for your consideration in the policy, and I'm not saying these are the only ones, and I'm not saying that these are shared by other board members, because these are just my opinion. First of all, I think it needs to be some type of advanced process as far as notification of the board members of the contract. Either we need to get the contract, set a day period, if it's going to be 14 days in advance of our voting on it. We shouldn't be given a contract like so many times was handed out at the meeting saying this has been reviewed and we should vote on it then, and we probably mistakenly should have said, hold on, let's have more advance notice so we can study this a little bit more thoroughly. So I'm even suggesting potentially a two-step process. To get presented at one board meeting, and we vote on any contract items at the second board meeting. But I'm not sure if that's workable. I'll leave that process to the experts to think about the pluses and minuses to each. The other, we should not have the college attorney involved in this the president's contract. The college attorney works for the president. It puts that person in it, and it works. But that college attorney represents the college. So you're representing an individual employee. That employee needs to get their own counsel outside, pay for it themselves, and if they want counsel, they get that person to represent them. And the college attorney should be out of the president's contract business. It should be outside. It puts them in too awkward a position. I agree with that, Deborah. Also, we should always employ, in my opinion, an outside independent firm like we have with Ford and Harrison. And when I say independent, not the same labor firm that represents the college in other employment matters, because that firm has a relationship with the college president in that case, because that's who selects it. The board approves it, but the board selects it. It should be a firm outside of the normal employment firm, totally independent. This is their only job they're doing for the college, is this presidential contract. We also should have an analysis of the contract that accompanies any contract or contract amendment that talks about what they project the cost of that contract amendment is, so that we know what the cost is. So I think we had that analysis. In this case, it would have answered a lot of questions if there was a worksheet that went along which explained it. Also, our contract, and I'm not sure if this can be done because what I mentioned about the college attorney, but every other contract at this college that I know of goes through contract review. And I'm a county official. I know every contract we do in the county goes through a contract review. It has a cover sheet, and it goes through all this approval process that, whatever department, that finance knows how much it costs, that personnel knows that if it affects them, that purchasing knows that we complied with all the purchasing requirements. And so I'm wondering if this should go through a contract review that the board sees, that makes sure that each department which is affected by some aspect of this has signed off to say that it meets their specifications. Because what personnel knows about a matter may be different, and in all due respect to Ford and Harrison, I mean, when you get into these college contracts with all the peculiar rules that Board of Trustees have, you probably would want that type of contract review to help y'all in the review if you were the firm selected to be that firm. And I think as much as possible, the contract needs to be simple. This contract was way too complicated. You should be able to read a legal contract and understand what it means. And this one had so many amendments and so forth, and we may even want to consider limiting number of amendments to just do a new contract. Because when you get into those amendments, it creates tremendous confusion. And that's something that we should look at as far as procedure. And then as much as possible, I think the benefits that are offered the president should be the same benefits that are offered to our senior administrative staff. I know Florida law allows for certain senior staff things, for pension benefits and for some other things. If that's what the law allows for our administrative employees, it should be the same for the president as much as possible. And I would hope that some of these things that we've done, such as housing allowance, car allowance, just be put into compensation, call it compensation, and don't call it all these different categories. So that's my suggestions on process, that maybe procedures that you could put together for us to look at a future meeting. And we're going to be faced with this very quickly. And this is going to get ahead of myself in the presidential search, but I think going into this process with the presidential search, I think Mr. Brett and Mr. Lang need to contact the 4 finalists and make sure, and I'm not sure how it's being done, that we're somewhere. I'm not sure if the salary's ever been talked about with these 4 finalists. And I think before they make it to the campus, I think there needs to be some understanding of what their requirements are, and that we're within the ballgame of where we should be. And I would defer certainly to Mr. Brett to represent us to the board on those types of talks. But that's a separate issue from this. Let's stick to this right now.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Gibbons.
I wholly concur with you, Mr. Burke, on all those things. I would just add, I think, 2 things. One is you talked about really resolving conflicts, which attorneys do all the time. And when we're talking about contracts, I think that we should give Mr. Lang the leeway to give us back the information whether or not there's a conflict, and I think he does that. And I don't know if we want to get too involved in the conflict resolution stuff, because and as attorneys, they have to do that anyway. Secondly, we're about to enter into a contract with someone. I would like, if the board would allow for it to happen, and if the chair would allow for it to happen, for Ford and Harrison, while we have them, to look at the current contract and tell us where we made mistakes before, so we don't do the same thing again. I think while we have this professional firm, we probably need to, I wouldn't say milk it, but use it as much as possible so that we get the best advice to move forward. I think it would be crazy for us to go back out and try to find another firm right now when she has and Mr. Lang has already looked at the current contract, and they can tell us, this doesn't make sense. We don't do this anymore. Why are we doing this? Especially if their firm is doing the labor and employment stuff already. I think that they could probably review what we have and tell us what we don't need to be doing anymore as a board.
When I met with Mr. Lang and Ms. Janish last week, I asked both of them if they could maybe get their heads together on this future contract, knowing that the Ford and Harrison firm can bring a level of specialized expertise to the table. And so, of course, with the approval of this group, that was the direction I was starting to go in.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, where we got into some problems were changes in state law that we in turn as board members aren't that current on. We need to get a process set up, and probably through our board attorney. When the state law does change, and it changed during this period, this is over a lengthy period of time, that we need to get advice from the board attorney if there's a new change in the law where you're limited to a certain amount of sick pay, or if they changed again, or vacation pay, or whatever. We need to be made aware of that so that we can update the contract accordingly. And I think, as Mr. Burke said, the simpler the better to follow what we've done. Obviously, with Dr. Cutler's contract is amended, and what that does is just complicate things, because you make an amendment, you have to be careful you're not contradicting something that was previously set out, and then with changes in state law and we don't know about it, we lead ourselves down the path we don't want to be.
Mr. Gibbons?
Mr. Johnson, I agree with you, but to the extent that Mr. Lang can do that, there's so many things that change every year in the legislature. And, that's the business that I'm in, and I can tell you that it is nearly impossible to track everything every year. It shakes out 2 years later, and you figure out something's passed. Somebody put something in proviso language. I just don't want to put him under that kind of microscope and say he has to know when the legislature ends or at the end of the year. It's impossible sometimes.
Well, but
there's so many bills being passed.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is we need some kind of a vehicle.
We need a mechanism, but I don't know if it's just one individual. I don't know if you can do it.
Maybe the State Board of Education,
Sure.
we need to rely upon someone to let us know that there's a potential conflict arising.
Sure.
Because we can make a contract today, and the legislature could change something.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that's a difficult, that's a daunting task.
But it's one I know that I am not capable of following up on.
Mr. Burke?
I think, again, we just need a process and procedures for this. And that's what we suggested, that legal counsel come back and come up in the college family with process and procedures for a presidential contract.
And just to your point, Mr. Burke, on discussions with the candidates that we have right now, I've spoken on several occasions to Dr. Hockaday about the contract portion. His advice has always been to me that we don't get into contract discussions at all at this point. We don't talk ballpark salaries, compensation, that discussion starts, and it seems a little strange, but it starts after we pick our finalist. And I was talking to him yesterday about it, as a matter of fact. And we're going to talk in a few minutes here about a potential date after our last interview for us to meet as a board and make our selection. And then that following week, we would get right into the contract discussions. And so that does seem a little strange, but
That's fine. That's what he recommends?
that's what he recommends. So I will circle back to him today on that
Sure.
to talk about our discussion, but.
It's good we talk about it here today, Terry.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I'm good.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. Janish, thank you very much for your assistance on this. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
I'm on the clock.
I was going to say no.
We'll have a nice day.
I'll walk out. Thank you. May I be excused also?
Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Lang, and thank you for,
Thank you, Mr. Lang.
thank you for bringing Fort and Harrison to the table.
Yeah.
That was your research that did that, so I appreciate that very much.
Thank you,
We all
Mr. Lang.
Okay, the next item on the agenda under number 7 is the update on the presidential search process. Mr. Johnston, would you like to just give a brief summary of our meeting of the 12th with the recommendation and approval of the finalists from the search committee?
Kim, you have a rough draft of that, or I think that you commented this morning, you had a rough draft. And that probably is the best way to proceed in my mind, rather than having me try to, from memory, to proceed, because I didn't bring any of the paperwork, because I didn't know what you meant by but we do have 4 names that were submitted to the board. And scheduling, I know, has been done.
It's in front of you there, Dick, in your book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess it is here in front of us. That's the first I've seen it, but
That's just a draft schedule for our first. I wanted mainly for you to just to mention the 4 names that we approved at
Okay.
at the 12th.
okay. Paula Gastonved, Dr. Bill Law, Thomas Keegan, and Kay Waller were the 4 that came out of the search process.
Okay. And most of you are probably aware of this, but those names were presented to the board on the 12th for approval, and they were accepted unanimously. And so we have interviews that are starting next week, actually. And so, Amelia, could you just give us a little overview as to that process going forward here? And then I have some additional items to talk about with regard to our final discussions on selection. So.
Yes, our very first finalist comes to town on Monday, and we're looking forward to that. We have a very busy schedule for all of our candidates. Dr. Gastonville will start Monday morning at 11 with her down at the downtown center. We'll go for late into that night, and then early the next morning, and late into the next night, and then the third day will be at it again early in the morning and finish here with you all from in the late afternoon. The next candidate will come the middle of March, and that's Dr. Law. His schedule has been changed just slightly because here in this room there is the Narrowing the Gulf Conference, and so we're going to have to move his final interview to Seminole. So you all need to make sure that you're aware that Dr. Law's interview will be there instead of here.
What date's the interview that we have with Dr. Law?
You've got it in
18th.
front of you, yeah.
18th, March 18th.
Do I have it on me? Where?
We only have one person.
Yeah.
That's right, but this is another one that came out on email.
This is an email.
Okay. Can you just pass that? And I can.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll give it back.
That's Dr. Law at Seminole then on the 18th. The next one is Dr. Keegan. He'll be here on the 30th of March, the 31st of March, and April the 1st. Your interview with him will be April Fool's Day on April the 1st. He's very much aware that's April Fool's Day. The final interview and visit is the next week. And it ends on the 7th, which is a Wednesday, and that is Dr. Walter.
And that's here again? So the only one that's not here is
The
Law?
only one that's not here is Dr. Law, and that's because this room is taken on the day of his interview. They're all 3:30, right, except for the very last one, which is at 3 o'clock. And that the times are to accommodate your all schedules mostly, not the candidates.
Mr. Gibbons.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Do you want us to try to make some of this stuff or just the interview?
On advice of Dr. Hockaday, he suggests that we not be a
Go to
part
any
of
of it.
any of this.
Good, all right. So this is a lot.
Yeah. This is a very, very full slate. And Amelia, I cannot thank you enough. I can't imagine how you put this schedule together. Every half an hour, there's something going on for 2.5 days.
And believe me, we're still tweaking it.
I
mean,
can
there are
imagine.
little bitty, teeny tiny things that come up almost by the hour. But, pretty much that's what you see there is what we're going to do.
Right. So, again, Dr. Hockaday's suggestion is that the board members refrain from attending any of these items over these couple of days, and that our first encounters with the candidates would be during the actual board interviews.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to call Dr. Hockaday on that. I think I would personally, I don't know what the rest of the board, but I'd like to just be a silent observer of how they participate with students and faculty. And I'm going to call him and see if, unless he has some major objections to, if I can fit it into my schedule, is just to sit there and listen or stand there and listen to whatever is going on at some of these various times that are convenient. I think it'd be helpful to us to get a reaction back from those that he's participating with. How when we meet, a question of mine, when we meet as our follow-up, or we meet with each of these candidates, can we get input from the groups? Is that coming up, Amelia?
You'll have input.
Okay.
Here's what I think he'll probably tell you if you call and ask him that. He will tell you that it will not be fair unless you meet all the candidates. He will probably tell you that unless you make arrangements to go observe all the candidates, that it's not going to be a fair process. In other words, all 4 of them, which you might be able to do, but that's what he'll probably tell you. That's what.
And that makes sense. I mean, if
Yeah.
you go to one and you don't go to the others, then
Yeah.
there could be an influence there. And so,
And you will have input. Here's how you'll have it. On every campus now, there is a question box, at least one, probably more than that, throughout the campuses. And we left it sort of open to the provost to decide how they wanted the boxes distributed and how many they wanted and all of that. But they're all up now. And everybody on the campus has an opportunity to put a question in that box. Those questions will be asked at the meetings with faculty, students, and staff. And also, as the people go into those meetings, they will get a little card. And it will have an email address on the card that will ask that they use that address to respond with their thoughts on the candidate that they just met and heard. So we will compile all those comments, and you will have them before you make your final decision.
Will there be a classification so we know, are they a community member, are they a student, are they administrator, are they a career employee, are they a faculty member? Because I think that's very important that we know what perspective they're coming from.
I hope so. I can't remember for sure, but I think probably we can.
I hope that's as part of that thing, before they get the email, they classify themselves as something. So, I mean...
We've asked them to put in the subject line of the email the candidate that they just observed, so that they will, so we'll know who they're talking about for sure. And we can also ask them to put whether they're a student, a faculty member, or I'm pretty sure we can do that.
Thank you.
But you will have those to us in time that we can
Yes.
evaluate them.
Yes. I'll have them as they become available. For instance, after Dr. Gestenveld is here next week, we expect to have her comments accumulated and out to you before Dr. Law gets here. And then the same thing with Dr. Law. After he leaves, we expect people to get their comments in so that those comments are all in before the next candidate comes and so on. So the only candidate that we will be dealing with at the end is the last candidate, Dr. Walter, those comments, and I think we can get them to you.
Mr. Chair, is there, in your discussion with Dr. Hockaday, are there any particular questions he wants us to ask these candidates? We may have, I'm sure we're all going to have our own personal observations, but are there any particular subject matters that he wants to be sure are addressed?
He has provided to us 10 questions. I think Amelia has copies she's going to pass out. These are suggestions. The format that he suggests, and of course we can do whatever we want, but he suggests that each of the trustees
Thank you, Amelia.
pick 2 questions. Now, if you have a question you want to ask and it's not on this list, that's fine. We can substitute whatever question you want. In his experience, these are kind of the basic questions that seem to elicit a lot of the information that we're going to be looking for. But the bottom line is that we all need to ask the same 2 questions of each candidate. Now, the answers that we receive from these questions would naturally lead to some follow-up that could go in a different direction. And after those 2 questions are asked, then we can get into whatever area we want. But in an effort of fairness to all the candidates, he feels that it is essential that we all ask the first 2 same questions of each candidate. Again, these are suggestions. Just to help us as a guide, we can use these, or we can come up with our own. The key is to ask the same questions. Mr. Begins.
Who should we submit our questions to, Mr. Chair?
What I would like to do is for us, we have our first interview next week. What I would like for you to do is to take these 10 questions home, get back with Amelia.
Okay.
With the 2 questions you want here, or a substitute question or 2 that you might have.
Okay.
And so that Amelia and I will help to sort these out. And if you see a couple on here that you want, call Amelia right away. And so it's kind of like a first come, first served type thing. And if you, again, you don't have to use any of these. These are just suggestions. But what we would like to do is to have the questions divvied up and assigned by Thursday. Mr. Burke.
Just so I'm clear, you said we should always ask the same questions of all the candidates. Am I correct that after that question and answer period's over, then we could ask specific questions that we have? Because, each of us up here have conducted some type of job interview with employees. I mean, I certainly am going to ask the people who are not current presidents how we'll be going from a chief administrator to being the CEO. The fellow from out in Washington, how are you going to acclimate to Florida, which is unique to, each person's situation. And some, gosh, you've been a president a long time. Are you going to be energized to do something? That's the time period after we ask these questions where we can get into the more candidate-specific questions. And that's proper under what Dr. Hockaday, I certainly hope it is, because those questions need to be asked.
Absolutely. It's just at the start of the interview to maintain the fairness quotient across the board, that the same questions be asked of each candidate. But then, after that point, we can go wherever we want.
Okay.
Because I think probably there's certain questions I have of a couple of different candidates that maybe we all have them, just from knowing their background and knowing some of them about them, where they stand on certain issues.
Right. We have 2 hours allotted to each interview, so we're going to have plenty of time.
It'll go by quickly, though.
Yeah, but we'll certainly need more than 2 questions each, I would presume. But that's the plan.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that? Is Mrs. Bilarak is still on the phone, I hope?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Any questions, ma'am?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. So if I could ask the trustees to review these questions, get back with Amelia before Thursday so that we can have our game plan in place by the first part of the week.
I don't care which one's got assigned to me.
Well,
You know, does it matter?
If you'd call her and let her know.
I heard that.
We'll have a plan.
I'll take whatever.
Any other questions? Anything else from you, Amelia?
No, we're looking forward to these visits. They're going to be long and lengthy and tiring, but we are going to do them the best we can, and we are anxious to welcome our guests.
I just have two other items.
Just one more thing, can I just say this? And we're going to treat these people as our guests, and I have talked to people on the campuses about the need to remember that we are still recruiting in a sense. We're courting these people, and the worst thing that could happen would be for you to choose one of them and that person turn us down. So we want to make these visits just as powerful as they can be, and we want to make them fall in love with us just as much as we're going to fall in love with at least one of them.
Okay. I would like to suggest a date in talking with Dr. Hockaday. And by the way, he is not planning to come to the interviews unless we want him. I told him yesterday I didn't feel like it was necessary. He said he'd come if we requested him, but probably is not required. However, we would like to pick a date, and we talked about, first of all, our last interview with Dr. Walter is on April 7th, which is a Wednesday. And we would like to meet as soon after that date as possible, and we're looking at a tentative date of Friday, April 9th, a lunchtime meeting with Dr. Hockaday here.
Is that Good Friday?
I don't...
No.
Okay, good. Okay, just want to make sure.
I'm good.
Is there a possibility, Mr. Chair, of putting it back 1 week?
I'm sure it's a possibility.
Well,
again,
I would like to just see us get by April 15th, just for professional reasons. And the 16th is the following Friday.
I'm not going to be here.
I don't know if you can hear me, can you?
Yes.
I'm not sure because I don't have my calendar with me. So I can't agree on a date today.
Okay. Did I hear that two members cannot make it on the 16th?
Right.
Mr. Johnston, could you reconsider on the 9th? And
Oh, I just have no idea where I'm going to be, at this point in time. I'll reconsider the 9th, yes.
Okay.
I just think if it was possible, if it's not possible to get everybody here, then we'll try for the 9th then.
Okay. Well, in view of the fact that Ms. Bilirakis does not have her calendar, perhaps, Kim, let's confer on this, and we'll get some potential dates out and try to get this scheduled as soon as possible then, okay?
Mr. Chair, if we can't do it on the 9th, I can be available from like 8 to 12 on the 16th if we do it in the morning, but you won't be available at all. I have a flight that leaves at like 1 o'clock, so I'll have to leave.
Mr. Burke, did you have a question?
When the schedule becomes available for the other three candidates, you're going to send that to us also?
Yes.
This schedule is very helpful just to see. Thanks.
The only other item, again, in speaking about the process of our selection on that day, that particular day, whatever it turns out to be, again, a suggestion from Dr. Hockaday. We can do whatever process we want, but he was suggesting that we do the first ballot where we pick our top two candidates, and then some discussion, and then we vote on the final candidate.
So we vote for two to come here prepared to vote for two candidates. And so, just so there'll be no discussion, then we come to a meeting with two names on a piece of paper before we get here?
That's the plan.
Okay.
And then his suggestion.
Whatever you say.
We can do whatever we want. Think
Well,
about
but
it.
it's a process of elimination, and you're eliminating two quickly, and going to your two strongest candidates, hopefully. And then you're going to sit down and discuss those two, and then vote on one of those two.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I think it's a good plan. Okay.
Well,
Okay,
Before we go,
Mr. Gibbons.
are we going to have a majority vote, or are we?
You're going to have to have a majority.
Well, I mean, are we
Hopefully,
unanimous
it's
or-
going to be by acclamation.
All right, okay, all right.
But if not, it'll be a majority vote.
Okay.
I think, again, it's the process, and as much as other people said the process, our rule is we come with to that meeting, and there's only one rule out here so far. We come to the meeting with two names on a piece of paper. And that's, so that's our rule.
Yeah.
So after that, we decide how it goes.
Exactly.
Based on how that vote goes.
Exactly.
Good.
It's going to have to be majority thereafter.
Yeah, right.
Dr. Furlong.
I very carefully have stayed out of this, but just if I could make one observation, just make sure that after the 7th, which is the fourth candidate, that there's that gap to study the results from the campuses before you pick
I agree.
before you come forward. That'll be a temptation at the end of the fourth one. The two names may pop in your head, but
Sure.
let's wait for the campus thing. And the 16th does that. But Amelia's got to get that done, got to get it to you, and then
Good enough.
you'll be looking at all four with all the same data.
Okay, well, we'll get that
That's a
date
good
picked, and
observation.
good advice, thank you.
Because we're not in any real rush. We want to get it done, but I think what Tom's point just made, from the 7th to the 9th, leaves you with 2 days.
Is there another day in that week, maybe we can?
Well,
On a Thursday, maybe?
it could be a
Dick,
Thursday.
You can't do it on the 15th.
I'd probably do it on the 15th as well as anything else,
Well, it's not going to do us any good to pick a date now with Ms.
Yeah.
Villarakas not having her calendar, so let's let Kim get some potential dates out to us, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay?
Great.
Anything else on this? Great, thank you very much. And Amelia, again, thank you very much for what you've been doing through this process. It's been great, absolutely great. Okay, back to our agenda. No report from council, is that correct?
No report on new business from general counsel.
Okay. Motion to...
I think we have a presentation to begin with there, sir.
Yeah. On D1, yes. Dr. Vitado.
And Terry, since it goes right into that, I hope on D2 and 3, they just explain that to us while they're doing, after their presentation.
Is that okay?
So we
Yes.
just go right into that, please.
We're pleased to be here this morning to present the Clearwater Campus Master Plan. We've been working with Dr. Vitito for a couple of years on this plan, back and forth, and we've had the architects Harvard Jolly at the campus working, and we actually did a charrette with a number of the faculty and staff on the campus a while ago to talk about the master plan. So what you're going to see today is like any other master plan. It's the best thinking of a group of people, a team. It's difficult to say where you're going to be 10 years from now, even 5 years from now is hard to anticipate. But this master plan will give you some options, and we'll look at the possibility of some maximum growth for the campus. As you know, we've already started working on this campus. We've taken down the old social science building. We've put a brand new math and natural science building up on that campus. We've added some additional parking, and so we're happy to be here to get some roadmap as we move forward with this campus. Michael will do the presentation along with Dr. Vitito, and we'll be able to answer some questions along the way here.
Okay.
So for the master plan, it's really a long-range vision for the future build-out of the campus. We want to consider the building size, the placement, and also look at parking, stormwater, utility infrastructure, all of those items. Also, what we really wanted to do was to address the aesthetics of the building, to create a front door, to make sure there's some consistency with as we move forward. So therefore, it's important to develop a well-thought-out master plan. Sorry.
Let me just add to that. One of the things when you see the pictures, and if you drive by the Clearwater campus, it's really difficult to know where the front door is. And it's one of the things that we have identified and others have identified as something that we want to focus on primarily on the Clearwater campus. It's got some great buildings and just some great trees, and you'll see that. But if you were a new person, a new student, and you wanted to know how to get in here and where is the focus point, it's just difficult. So you'll see this plan addressing that as an option.
I see lots of ugly portables, though.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
17 of those.
But we're going to take care of that.
So we'll just jump into what we're going to cover today is the campus identity, including that front door, the consistency of the campus. We're going to look at building sequencing and locations, really just an option. You know, the master plan is really flexible. There's multiple different ways to get to the long-range vision, and we're just going to look at what the long-range vision that we all came up with as a whole. So looking at the campus identity, there are a lot of natural site amenities on the campus, especially the oak trees throughout the quad and the perimeter of the campus. And this just highlights some of the beautiful trees that we have at the Clearwater campus. The other thing that we'd like to do is really to reestablish the quad. The quad is not really much of a uniform shape right now. There are the 17 portables that are all encroaching upon the quad. So it's a great green space in the center of the campus, but there's not a lot of consistency to it or unity with that, which is something we'd like to establish moving forward. Another item is really, as Susan had discussed, identifying the front door and refreshing the identity. When you look at these images or elevations of the property, it is very difficult to determine where to pull in, which entrance do you go in, how do you find administration, how do you find the library.
Can I just stop you for a second? The South Florida Bayboro campus just has done that, and if you haven't seen their front door, they created a front door, I think off of 5th or 6th, I forget which it is now, that really just kind of sets the whole campus up, and you just expect that's where your entrance should be.
Absolutely. And their walkway or student walk, I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, the plaza is just incredible. To use something similar to that at this campus would be fantastic.
Because that's just a good illustration of what they did to a facility down there that was just kind of disjointed, much like Clearwater, but they did pull it together. Mm-hmm. So it's a great idea.
Great. And then also we have a material palette at the campus. We've got the natural stone. As we've demolished buildings in the past, like the social science building, we salvage that material, clean that material up so we can use it moving forward. So as we build new buildings, we can keep that consistency of the campus. So now we're going to look at building sequencing and locations to get us to this long-range vision. So in order to do our site analysis, we had to look at the buildings that were going to be demolished or the portables that I think we can all agree need to be removed. The existing buildings that may be renovated or demolished depending on when we get to that phase of the construction or of the master plan, and then also identifying buildings that are newer that need to remain. In looking at the campus, you can see here that we have 17 portables really in the heart of the campus, and I think we can all agree that we want to eliminate those as soon as possible. Here are some of the images. If you haven't walked through the center of the campus, this is all essentially right on that quad area. So looking at the site, we have the buildings in white identified as buildings to remain. The Crossroad buildings were recently renovated. The back of house area, the chiller plant, the maintenance area needs to stay where that is. And then the new NM building. We also identified buildings that could be, we feel should be demolished as we move forward, being social science, which we've already discussed about in the past, the BT, administration, and BK, which is the bookstore, and some student services activities there. Additionally, we have the existing buildings that we feel can be renovated. It may be that as we get to those, it makes sense to demolish them depending on what the need of the campus is, being the library, the arts auditorium, the teaching auditorium in LA. So this is just sort of an image overlay showing three-dimensionally the buildings that we have, the portables in the center of the campus as well. So we feel the first phase, which ties into the bond resolution, which is the next item on the project, is ES, which is in addition to the teaching auditorium for an ethics and social science building, replacing the 1,000 student stations from the social science building, and really the first step to reestablishing the quad and moving forward. Next, we could remove the portables. The building, the square footage is designed to accommodate the 17,000 square foot of portables that we have, so those could be removed.
I'm sorry. The ES, what is that again?
Ethics and social science.
Okay. And that's just vacant land right now, right?
Correct. Right now, if I can go back.
Yeah.
So we have the TA. So it's really keeping the teaching auditorium,
Right.
cleaning it up a little bit, and just sort of reestablishing a building on the
Okay.
backside.
And we
A two-story
renovated the teaching auditorium not that long ago, right? The inside of it?
The interior space, but
Right.
like the mechanical room, and
Okay.
some of those items need to be updated. And this is on the backside. We're representing sort of all of these buildings in a two-story, but they all could be two-story or three-story, whatever the need is, really to reduce the footprint and, depending on location and the amount of space we have. But the 41,000 square foot that we're talking about here can fit in this configuration or smaller footprint for 3 stories.
The 41,000 is just the ES part, right?
Correct. So then we could, like I said, remove the portables. The next step could be to demolish the BT building. Those functions could move into the social science building and the space that's vacated as some of those facilities move into the new ES. Then we could replace the administration building. And this, you'll see, begins reestablishing a central line to the quad.
Mm-hmm.
It steps it back a little bit from the front of the campus. And a 2-story, or really, I think a 3-story building would be great here to sort of begin that new front door. And when you come on campus, this is where you know to start. Therefore, we could replace or demolish the old administration building. If the next step is to be the library, we could build a new library there. That location is ideal for a library because we already have the entrance from Drew Street. And we can really segregate for people coming just for the library versus people coming on campus for classes.
What would we do, because I know you still have the building there, what would we do with the old library? Classrooms?
I mean, we could do anything at that point. It really depends on the needs of the campus at that time.
Mr. Burke, one of the interesting things that we've dealt with over the last several years that I've been here is a couple of new libraries. And if you can leave the existing library in place while you're building a new library, it really makes it much easier than having to remove all the books, everything, and move it. And that's essentially what we did on the St. Pete campus. We took down the old bookstore, food service, and everything, built a new library, and transitioned everything over. So you essentially have you would have the old library to talk about whether or not it's economically feasible to remodel it to something else, or whether or not it would be better for you to tear that down and maybe put additional parking in that area that would service the library. One of the things about a library is that, and we've talked about this, is what you really would like to do with a library is to get it so that you don't have pedestrian and vehicular traffic crossing each other. So if you can get it on the corner somewhere, separate entrances, students, the public can come to that library and not have to be crossing each other. It just makes for a better both pedestrian and vehicular pattern.
I would assume that the library is one of the oldest buildings on the campus. Is that correct or not?
They're all, it is. Many of them are 45 years old and older, so
Because
yeah.
it just feels as old as can be. I mean,
Yeah, it acts as old as can be, and it costs us money, to operate and to keep it up. And we have challenges with that building, as we do with others on that site all the time. One of the things that we do before we tear a building down is we have to go through this very
Right.
extensive
I know.
Gastaldi report with the state and get an architect and evaluate the difference in the cost in building a new building and renovating a building. And when you look at facilities like this and the age that they are, the numbers never come in that it's better to remodel the building than it is to build, a new one. And you can't get these buildings remodeled into code.
Right.
It just
Plus the
almost an
energy
impossible.
efficiency, what you've done with the green building that we have there, I mean.
Right,
that
makes
all
a
adds-
huge difference.
The administration building, if it was 2 stories, how many square foot would that be? And if it was 3 stories, how many square feet would that be?
I've got, at the end of the presentation, I'm sorry, right now, we just based on square footage that fits in that space. Towards the end of the presentation, I've got a square footage and an approximate cost if we were doing it. If we added another level, it would just increase by 50%. And I'm sorry, I don't. And I think at the end, because we're not sure of names, this is just a potential
Okay, so it's
look. I've got it by a
45,000
number.
square feet, so just add half of that?
Yeah, so it
Okay,
could go up
thanks.
another 22,500 if we made it 3-story, or we could keep it the same square footage and reduce the footprint.
Thank you.
The other thing about, and that's a great question, because one of the things that happens in a building like that is the academic side and student services and administrative side of the house identify exactly what should be going into that building. And we've had some changes in our processes and our functions and how we do things. So it gives us an opportunity to maybe look at some square footages, put things in that building that are now in somewhere else, or put things that are in the administration building that might need to go in another building.
We're talking some pretty big buildings here, too. Is 82,000, would that be our biggest building in the main campus?
At that, I believe it would be at that campus. I'm not sure about other sites. Like the Olympia building is, over 100,000
That's
square
right,
foot.
okay.
Essentially will be someday. The Olympia building in Tarpon Springs, it could go up to maybe 160,000 square feet if it was totally built out.
So, and if just looking at the next building, perhaps to replace the social science building, and we feel this could really establish that front door of the campus from Northeast Coachman. You'll pull in, you'll look right at the administration building, you'll know that's where you need to go. And then also by reducing the footprint, we add some parking right next to those buildings. I know at administration right now, if you're driving around at peak registration time, it is difficult to get a spot. And this allocates some more parking. This can actually add 300 spaces to that face of the campus. And then we just jump to a sort of the long-range master plan of perhaps a T configuration for the quad. We looked at a T or a rectangle, really, and you'll see that all the new buildings, reestablish that quad. And in looking at that space now, we can look at those trees, look at the functions if we do something similar to what was done at St. Pete, and start, doing plantings and such as we move forward to support this long-range vision. And again, we're looking at right now, we have 367,000 square feet of buildings on the campus. The proposed buildings in this section, when you look at your printouts, because we're not truly sure of what every building is going to be used as, we just went to letters to represent those. We talked about the square footages that they're represented today, and looking at a cost in today's dollars for each of those facilities. So depending on the sequencing, which one you wanted to do next, you could look at what budget we may be looking at moving forward. And again, these are just based on today's numbers, not predicting when the buildings could be replaced in the future. Therefore, once this vision is built out, we're looking at 580,000 square feet of buildings at the campus. Again, as we move forward, if there is a need to get that to that size for this campus.
You're basically just taking into consideration the present footprint without acquiring any additional land, correct?
Correct. This is all working within the existing footprint of the campus.
What's the latest on the acquisition of the church property next door?
We met with the church folks, Dr. Vitito and myself, several times. We had an appraisal done. They had an appraisal done which they were not willing to share with us, and we were not able to agree on a price with them. So they essentially have put the property on the market and have hired a real estate company to market that for them.
How much have they placed it on the market for?
I do not recall. I'm sorry. I can get you that
That's
information.
good. And can you get me what our appraisal?
Yes,
Did
I'll
it come
get
close? You know? Anyway, you just, yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Where is the church property located in relation to what you have here?
Next to CR,
Yeah,
right?
just a minute. There we go. Yeah, right here is, it's moving a little slow. Back there where the pointer is, that's the church property. So the chiller plant and the Crossroads building sort of wrap around that piece of property.
So if we had it would fit into the master plan then?
I think it would fit in really well because parking could go in that location and we could still have that quad, or if we needed more square footage or, you know, again, another separate entrance or something that needs to be a little bit separated as we move forward, we have that flexibility with that property. So I think our current vision works very well with that. And again, this is just a vision, and that was just one roadmap to get there. There's, 100 different ways to get there based upon what the needs are of the campus, what the funding sources are, when we're ready to move forward with any of these pieces. But I think that front elevation, I think what we all can agree on is we want to look towards getting rid of the portables, reestablishing that quad, establishing that front door, and focusing on that front elevation as soon as possible to get that, the campus identity, the front door, and to really get us moving in the right direction.
So does question number 11 to our presidential candidates need to be, where's, you could have come up with $128 million to make this happen?
Yeah.
That's question number one.
And when?
We don't have a facilities question on here, though. We should.
Definitely. Okay, so questions? Anyone? You're looking for an approval today?
We would like an approval because we are going to talk next about the bond resolution, which will put into play, if you approve it, Building A there, which is the new ES building, Ethics and Social Science building. And this will give us, again, sort of a roadmap to start thinking about as we move forward.
I move approval item D1.
Second.
Discussion?
Terry, I just want to thank you all for doing this. This is just so important. I believe this campus is not up to par with our other campuses as far as the quality of the buildings, and I think that hurts us as far as enrollment. When you have an option of going to a brand-new building or a building which is old, students, if they're, picking campuses, will pick a different campus. And we're competing now with all these for-profit institutions and so forth, and they're in new buildings. It's important that our facilities, so at least this gets us on the roadmap to making our campus what it needs to be, and I applaud you all for the work that was put into this, and Harvard Jolly, who does a good job for us too. Because there's lots of needs there. I was on the campus almost all day on the 15th, and it has some beautiful buildings and a lot going for it, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
Mr. Burke, if I might just add, too, the concern that I've had as a provost of the campus is that given the age of the building and the length of the time that it's going to take to go through this process and begin to replace buildings, I think it's important to get started now. The buildings continue to age. The library is experiencing some challenges, as Susan has mentioned, and the longer we wait to get started, the more of those challenges we're going to see. So I think it's important to start because it is probably a 10 or 15-year process possibly to go through this. So the buildings age as we speak.
And $128 million process in today's dollars. So.
Other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
On item number D2, this is the bond resolution so that we can go ahead and take advantage of the sale of the bonds with bond finance and have...
Let me say too, this was on the agenda last time just for discussion. So in setting that up, what we had talked about was the fact that, just your last point, Mr. Burke, was not only is PICO thin, but when the economy gets better and our enrollment has a dip, most likely traditional, PICO will turn around about the time that maybe we won't be able to generate what we need.
Sure.
So this is an opportunity, as Stan said, to get moving. And then Susan's put this together.
So it will allow us the opportunity to have sufficient funds to do this ES building at Clearwater get started, and also funds to start on the build out of the second floor of the shelled out space on the Seminole campus. and we will be paying these bonds back as we are presently. If you recall, we bonded for $20 million about 3 years ago, and that's the money that we used to build the new natural science and math building and take down the old social science building and do all the upgrades to the parking lot, add additional parking, some infrastructure, and that type of thing. It's worked extremely well, and we would anticipate this being just a great project.
And this is part of a state bonding program.
Yes,
It's
it
not
is.
our,
No.
not St. Pete College. It's
And this gets paid back out of future PICO funds.
No, this gets
Student
paid
fees.
back out of fees that the students at the college pay. It's a student capital improvement fee that we collect from the students, and you are required then to pay back this bond from those fees.
Is that an add-on to tuition, or is that part of the tuition basis?
It's a fee that's assessed.
In addition to the tuition dollar?
Yes.
But it's not a new fee, it's the fee
But
we've
per-
been
per-
charging.
per credit hour,
Yeah.
right?
Right, per
Yes.
credit.
Okay, I move approval of item D2.
Second.
Discussion?
Is it just, this assessment, is it just placed on, like on this case, at Clearwater campus students, or is it placed
No,
on
it's
all students?
it's college-wide,
College-wide, okay.
the fees that are collected.
It's like we charge the financial aid fee and the activity fee, and we have a capital improvement fee, plus tuition, that's what they told. This is not a new one, it's one we've been collecting, and you wait until you have enough revenue where it's worth bonding.
Other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. I think we could probably do that, sure. Mrs. Bilirakis,
Yes?
I want to thank you for participating in the meeting thus far. Most of the rest of the business that we have, we can probably move through okay without you. You're welcome to stay and continue to participate, but I think the key issues have been talked about, and we very much appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Well, thank you very much. And I was glad to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.
On item D3, back in August of 2009, this was the college's capital improvement program that we presented to you and that you approved, and then we sent this to Tallahassee as our request and priority for PICO money. In order for us to do the classroom building, the new ES building in Clearwater, and the build-out of the library on the second floor at the Seminole campus, we need to modify this first page and the backup documents to our CIP. The appropriation that came to us in the past for the Clearwater campus social science building was tied in with social science, BT, and natural science. It was all in one line item. It said renovation remodeling, but we're not renovating or remodeling the social science building. We tore it down. We had state approval to do that. So now in order to build a new building, construct a new building, which we did not have on our CIP last August, we need to modify our CIP, and that's what D3 does.
Mr. Bird.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Susan,
Well,
I'm
and I
sorry.
was just going to tie that a little bit to D4, and the reason for that is because, again, our 5-year facility survey, which the CIP is based on, did not address to construct a new building on the Clearwater campus. So we'll spot survey the survey with this, and we'll modify the CIP with D3, and we should be good to go.
Just kind of a cleanup process.
It is a cleanup process, and what happens, it's a good example of how you really you can't know 5 years ahead of time really what's going to happen, both with the funding and where you want to be from an academic standpoint. So the spot survey and the modifications to the CIP are the mechanism that you use to clean up the process, to add new things, to modify.
I'll move approval of both 3 and 4, D3 and 4.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Byrd?
Just a I think the rest of the agenda seems to be non-controversial, although we could ask our questions. I'll go ahead and put a motion for almost all the rest of the agenda. D, 5 through 8, approval. E, approval. All of item F, approval. All of item H, I, J, K, L, and M.
Second. Discussion? Mr. Burke.
Just on the, I applaud the college for applying for the Lumina Foundation grant on achieving the dream. I know this is a very competitive grant to receive. I know there's a lot of criteria involved, but I think it's very worthwhile, and I know this takes some energy to even apply for this, and I just want to thank the college for applying. Hopefully we'll receive these dollars, but I know it's very competitive.
Mr. Burke, you had asked about the possibility of hearing a word about what Achieving the Dream was, and Ann Cooper's ready to do that if you'd like to hear it.
I think it'd be good.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Furlong, good morning. It's my pleasure to discuss what the step that we are taking. This is a first step in asking for the Board of Trustees approval to now submit a letter of intent to the Achieving a Dream, or Lumina Foundation, to begin the process of applying for one of their grants. The way the process works is that we submit the letter of intent, and then they review our letter, and they decide whether they're going to invite us to actually apply for the grant. And one of the strengths to that letter of intent is if we have the Board of Trustees leadership's approval and support for moving forward. We've made some very good progress with our Title III grant in regards to our remedial students. Based on that progress, we wanted to continue, and so we established a developmental education committee, which is now our student success committee. We've been successful with our TRIO grant. We currently are applying for a Gates Foundation grant through the state for our remedial courses to provide students with opportunities based on how they test into the remedial courses to be able to fast track through that and get into the college level classes. So we feel we've done a number of things that have the support of data, and so we feel now this is the next step in moving forward. The whole process is based on having a learner-centered institution, which is part of our mission statement, and that it will involve bringing in the faculty and staff and leadership to promote a learning-centered institution that makes data-based decisions about how we go forward to improve our quality and our efficiency and, of course, the success of our students.
Does this fit into our SACS project?
Well, critical thinking is our QEP project for SACS, and of course critical thinking is a very important part, we feel, of the success of our students, and that's why it is already part of our student success skills course, and so we're continuing to, I think, interweave that into all of our courses, and so it could be a part in that way.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Dr. Cooper. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Other business. Dr. Furlong?
We're prepared to do a presentation on financial aid. We decided, you decided not to do it as a workshop this time, but build it into the agenda.
Sure.
I think, Tanja, are you going to, or Ann, who's going to introduce Michael Bennett? Set a little context, and Michael's going to do the presentation.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is indeed a pleasure to come before you and share.
Tanja's our Chief Student Service Officer, and Michael reports to Tanja. So
thank you.
Remind everybody.
As you know, financial aid plays a critical role in student recruitment and retention. If they don't have the money to come to school, we find it difficult to recruit them and to keep them here if they don't have the resources to be successful. About a year ago, the college looked at reorganizing financial assistance services, which is what we call financial aid at St. Petersburg College, and we hired an associate vice president, Mr. Michael Bennett, who has been with the college a little less than a year. He has 30 years of financial aid experience. He's been a past chair of the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, NASA, which is one of the largest national student aid organizations. And he's been on their board of directors for about 10 years. Since Mr. Bennett has been here, we have made several changes and improvements to financial aid with the assistance of Doug Duncan and team in AIS and other members to help us provide more quality services and effective communication with our students. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bennett so he can share with you the wonderful things that we have done in less than a year's time to try to be on the cutting edge of serving students with financial assistance.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board. I sent in advance this packet. I promise we won't go through every piece of paper in there, but I felt it might help frame the discussion. If you could just sit back and relax for about 10 minutes, I'm going to go through some slides and then I'll open it up for questions. But when we talk about what is financial aid at St. Pete College, we're looking at money provided to the student, grants and scholarships, self-help in the form of student loans, parent loans, and work opportunities for students. You see, this past fall, we had over 15,000 financial aid recipients, which represented 42% of our enrollment, 67% of our fall enrolled credits, approximately $50 million. This is a slide of what's happened nationally in terms of the breakdown of student aid in the 2008-2009 year from the College Board. And when we talk about financial assistance programs, as you know, there's federal programs and there's a listing of those. There's state programs. There's other types of programs. And there's also merit-based aid. We have money from our foundation. We have money that the college itself provides. And we have other things like employment, unemployment waivers, homeless outside agencies. So they're the types and the sources. The process itself is families fill out forms, and the form begins with the free application for federal student aid. That information goes through eligibility formulas, and if families are selected for what's called verification, they're asked to provide tax returns and verification worksheet. You had a verification worksheet in your packet. At the end of the line, once that process is completed, a family should receive a letter, and the letter would tell them what they're eligible for in terms of grants and loans at St. Pete College. When families are preparing to do the financial aid form, one parent and one student will go out on a website called a PIN website, and that PIN will serve as their electronic signature. The application itself is online. The FAFSA can be done online, and although when you looked at the worksheet there were 120 questions, once a family starts completing that FAFSA, it has skip logic, so they might only have to complete 20 or more questions, and that's a step in the right direction as the process has improved over the years. To help families, we try to do outreach. So right now we'll begin sending emails to our students, reminding them to apply for aid for the upcoming fall. We've done presentations at area high schools. In April, we're going to have what's called FAFSA Fest at several of our locations and invite the families to come in to help them through the form. We're then going to open it up after that to have a day, one day a week, where families can come in if they still need help and support them throughout the year. And one of the things we're looking at next year is to help low-income families with FAFSA completion by tying into the community when they're doing outreach, helping with tax returns. We might follow that presentation to help families. So we do a lot of outreach. All financial aid offices will have a financial aid website. And here's a couple screens of ours. This is the main page. This is a scholarship page. And this is the page relating to the foundation. As someone new here, I feel that can be cleaned up. So right now I just wanted to give you an example of a new front door. Right now I have 8 staff working on cleaning up our website, making it more student friendly, and making it a more useful tool. So we're excited by that, and that's an ongoing process. The reason we try to spend time helping families complete the form and complete it accurately is once that's completed, that information goes to all the colleges they've listed. It goes through 7 federal database matches. It goes to the state. So that's why we want to spend the time at the front end to make sure things are right. We deal in financial aid with many systems. You'll hear PeopleSoft talked a lot about here at the college. This is almost 15 different systems that we have to know and understand and help families. So if a student complains or is having problems, a lot of times we're going back and we're trying to figure out where they're at in this process and help them get through the rest of it. It's a highly automated process. In terms of our processing, there's what we would recall or refer to as backroom processing. So you see highlighted in purple financial aid document submission, because we'll get thousands upon thousands of documents either through mail, through fax, turned in at the MAP Center, and we have to make sure that they're being processed in a timely manner. We're a totally electronic office, so we use document imaging, so all that coming in is imaged and in the student's file. In addition to document submission, we have a backroom process for verification, for SAP appeals, and our call center. And they're all big operations with the number of students that we have. And one of the first things I was trying to do, and I'm still in the process of doing, is taking a look of each of those operations and seeing if they're as efficient and as staffed as appropriately as possible. This is a template. I'm going through all of our financial aid communication, looking at if it's clear, looking at the timing, looking if we're sending email or paper mail to students. Most of it is email, but this has been a good exercise for us to look at how we're communicating with students. We're one of the first areas here to use the PeopleSoft functionality called CommGen, so communication can automatically go out as event-driven activities. And I'd like to thank Doug and his staff for helping us with that. We're trying to teach and spend a lot of time helping students learn self-serve, because we don't want them to be calling unnecessarily. We don't want them to be standing in line. And these next 3 screens, this is what's called a student's checklist. So we'll teach them how to go online to look at what the status of their financial aid is. This is a new screen we developed this year to help the student understand satisfactory academic progress and where they might be in terms of that. And this is a screen that shows the different financial aid awards. And when we send this out to a student, it's offered to the student, and they can accept or decline the award. This has become particularly useful with loans. We would start out offering a student their maximum eligibility, and a lot of students will say, I don't need that much, and they'll reduce the amount or decline a loan if they don't want to borrow. Wanted to give you a quick snapshot. It's kind of tough to boil this down, but if we had a student that was a single mother, one child, $9,000 income, how their financial aid package would play out here is they would have tuition and fees of $2,757. Their federal state grants would total $7,750, and they'd get a refund of almost $5,000. So you would know someone who's extremely low income is having tuition and fees, books, and having money left over to attend. That's a good thing. That means we're accessible, and they should be able to do that. And if they needed additional money, they could choose to work or they could choose to borrow. A middle income family, this again example here, this family might not be able for need-based aid, but could receive a Bright Future scholarship. It would defer some of the cost, and they would be eligible to borrow. In terms of applicants, we continue to grow. You can see as of today, for the year we're in, we're at 30,000 applicants, and you can see the progression over the last 5 years of both applicants and the number awarded. And when I sent the packet out, I had some highlights of some of this data, tried to crunch the numbers. You can see right now in the current year, we're at $106.3 million. And again, that has rapidly increased here. In terms of aid by source, 81% is federal aid, 7% is state, 2.2 foundation and institutional, and that's not unusual for an institution like us. Aid by type, you see 62% is in the form of loans, 29% in the form of grants, 9% in the form of scholarship.
This is just our college?
This is just us. This is data for the 8-9 year. Dependency status, you see we're 69% independent students, and that's students that are older than 24 or could be a single parent or could be married. We're 31% dependent, under 24. The institution that I came from, that pie chart would be exactly the reverse. So with larger numbers of independent students, there's more of a focus on fast delivery and fast funding to them because they'll have a lot of additional needs.
Did you come from a four-year university or something?
I came from largest community college in New Jersey, Brookdale Community College. So that was 15,000 students, 5 sites. This is our loan for the 8-9 years. So we had $23.7 million in subsidized Stafford loans, $34.2 million in unsub. Very small private loan volume and plus loan. And our applicants that are borrowing continue to rise. I think that's happening across the nation in this economy and in these times. That's about a 20% increase in borrowing from last year that we're seeing as of today. We moved to direct lending this fall. Very smooth transition. We were very excited. It was a big project, but for the student, there's one lender. Our money is flowing much quicker. We're not dealing with several lenders and several guarantors, so we can award a student one day, and within 48 hours they have their money, and we're reconciling very easily. So we're happy with that and happy with that transition.
That's been an area, fellow board members, of scandal in the past nationally, and that's why that change took place, right?
Yes, and I think you'll see in the upcoming year, you'll see several of my colleagues moving to direct lending this year. In fact, I did a couple presentations for my colleagues in the state showing them how we did it and helping them with that transition. This, in terms of borrowing, shows you the limits, the total annual limits for freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors as dependent students. And this is for our independent students. You can see what they can borrow each year. So in terms of loans, you know, the money's there and they can take advantage should they decide. Student loan cohort default rates, which is always going to be a concern to colleges. In FY 2007, our cohort default rate went to 10.7. And whenever information like this is released, we'll pause, we'll look at what it could mean, we'll look at who defaulted. A lot of times it's students who stopped attending and dropped out. A lot of this could be an impact of the economy. But I also put in a slide to compare us with other community colleges and show how we line up on the cohort default rate. One of the things I want to do over time is look at all the back-end servicing, the financial literacy, the debt management, and look at services we can put on the back end to help our students understand borrowing and the impact of borrowing. But this is the cohort default rate of several other colleges. This is our organizational chart, and as Dr. Williams mentioned, I've been here since April. The light orange are open positions, the blue are new positions, and the green are changes or realignments of existing staff. So we have been spending a lot of time trying to use the staff we have and empower them as efficiently as possible. And I'm excited about that. I'm very happy with the staff we have in place, and I think if you knew each of them individually, you can see they work very hard And I'm very excited as we streamline our backroom processing and automate a bit more, how that's going to help them in serving students. Financial aid services, this slide has changed a bit since the one I gave you in your packet, and I brought copies of that. This includes not only the services provided by my staff, but services provided by the MAP generalists. So one of the things I would be looking at is, although we provide services to all the campuses, where staff are physically located. So you see the breakdown there. Clearwater historically has been a hub for us for our backroom operations. EPI is administrative and other staff, and then you see what's out at the campuses right now. And I'll be spending more time examining that in the upcoming year and seeing how all that is working. We work in a very complex regulatory environment, as you know, so there's federal regulations and federal program reviews. There's state regulations. Something new for me here was that our state auditors live here. They actually have an office. At other institutions I've been at, they would come in and leave, but I'm pleased to report in our last state audit, we had no findings. We're waiting for the final results of our Bright Future audit, and I anticipate no findings there, so I'm learning as we go there. But it is a highly regulatory environment that changes and has a lot of accountability. How we are different from other financial aid offices and how I would want us to be different is since I've arrived, we've increased our delivery speed. Things that were being done weekly are now being done daily. I think our services for students to get their books and get their money on Hire One is good. We're in the process of improving our website and online services. We're trying to teach students the skills they need to be independent, so we spend a lot of time on that. I think our outreach is good. I told you I think our staff is good. You've seen some of our forms. We try to make them student-friendly and easy for students to use. Most of my staff are very involved with the guarantee agencies and the lenders, so we look for opportunities to partner. And in terms of leadership roles and advocacy of students, you can see in my 30 years of aid, I've been involved in many leadership roles, and I would say the people that I know will be our friends also, and I try to be involved advocating for students. Dr. Furlong, I'm looking forward to learning Tallahassee and the state side of things, but I find our legislators genuinely want to do the right thing. A lot of times they need help in understanding what the issues are and what things mean, and I look forward to being involved at that level. Future issues at SPC, I think we're all struggling with service levels with dramatic applicant increases, so I would expect in the next year, this year we might have had a 25% increase in financial aid applicants. I would expect us to have at least a 20% increase in fall 2010. I'd like to be able to offer financial aid for the clock hour programs at all state. We're currently not doing that. I think it's always a problem with a highly regulated environment to keep your data processing systems up to date as things change. I'm looking forward to learn more about the data here. I've only been here a year, so I'm looking at reports that'll help guide decisions I'll be making. We talked about rising cohort default rates, financial literacy, default aversion, and debt management, and cyber counseling. We have a large population here of online students, and when people come to me and say, what are we doing? I think within our division we're trying to come up with the right answer for what we would call cyber counseling and making sure the services are there for students who never set foot in MAP or on campus, because they certainly expect to be served. I monitor on an ongoing basis the legislation and negotiated rulemaking. Any increase in Pell is a good thing. It helps our students. I'm watching student verification. Simplification, I've been involved over the years. I don't think we should need 120 question FAFSA form. You know, I'm a proponent of like a half a dozen questions and a link with the IRS. And I'm always monitoring retaking of coursework, academic progress, return to Title IV, because that really impacts on my world. And I'm in contact with the people that are doing that negotiating now, and watch that. An important message out to our students and families: if we look at our direct costs for the fall, and we have approximately $3,246, and we put that on a yearly basis, and we look at what it would cost, and that includes room and board at a public four-year college and a private four-year college, and we put that out into 2 plus 2, 2 years with us, and then 2 years at a public or a private, families save an enormous amount of money. If we take that same concept and do it with our BA program, you can see it even becomes a larger amount of money. And as someone who's done thousands upon thousands of presentations to students and families, I always try to have the students and the families pause and think about mortgaging their future. We have too many people going into large amounts of debt, both students and parents, and it's unnecessary. So that's a quick point there. Lastly, I would say I'm very much interested in what's on your mind, so as things come up, please feel free to let me know, and if I can provide white papers or other things. I would also want to be sure, not only you and everybody in the room, if you have financial aid questions for your children going to other institutions and we can help out, please feel free to pick up the phone. We can help navigate a lot of this.
Great, great. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. That was very, very good. Questions? Mr. Burke?
I want to thank you. That was a magnificent presentation. That's one of the most, for the time period you were given, the most comprehensive you could have possibly given us on financial aid, and I thank you for all this information. I have several questions. First of all, have we studied why the default rate is so varied here from these, you know, you have TCC at 16.7, Santa Fe at 8%, you know, why is that?
Well, sometimes if I went into more detail and showed the number of students in their cohort and the number of default, that drives the difference in the numbers. So the larger institutions might have more going into repayment and might have more in default. But have we thoroughly studied the issue? No. Will we? Yes.
Okay. What penalty is there to the institution for a student not paying back their loan?
For a student not paying back their loan, it can't be forgiven by bankruptcy. You know, they can put liens on their tax return.
But is there a penalty to the college?
There's only a penalty to the college if the cohort default rate would go up, say, over 20%. Currently, that's going to change because as this moves forward, they're going to go from a 2-year cohort default rate to 3-year, and then that'll increase to 30%. So if you had a cohort default rate above 30%, you could have some of your grants in jeopardy.
Okay, and what's the difference between sub-Stafford and unsub-Stafford?
Good question. If we took a student's budget, which we put together, they apply for financial aid, and there's a family contribution number that's as a result of that formula. Let's say their budget were $10,000 and their family contribution was $20,000. In terms of the formula for financial need, they would not have financial need because their family contribution is greater than our budget. They could still borrow under the loan program, but it would be unsubsidized. Okay. So the student or family would be billed back the interest. If they had the need while they're in school, the government is paying that interest to 6.2%.
Okay. And I have to admit, I was very surprised by, first of all, how much the dollars are for our college. $94.4 million of some type of financial aid, either through 29% of it Pell, 62% of it loans. And I was surprised the loan percentage is at 62%. I thought there was an effort to really discourage especially community college students from incurring too much debt, because so many of our students will come here for a few courses. They hope to get their 2-year degree, but they get derailed along the way due to family obligations, work obligations, and they're straddled with debt and no degree. So do you all do pretty good counseling to help them to avoid default on this thing, and what's your program there? Because that's very concerning.
Yes, we're required to do exit counseling with our students, and I think we're looking at enhancing those services to provide more face-to-face with our students in that area.
Do you think that will be effective?
I think it's effective, sure.
Again, I think one of the things as trustee I really learned was just how much of this is federally driven. And
absolutely.
I mean, we always look at our state budget. We lobby up in Tallahassee because that comes right to the college. But we're doing about $94 million, which our students wouldn't be here without that financial aid. So it shows how important to remember the federal aspect of our responsibilities. The call center, what hours is that available to the students?
You know what? Call center. Off the top of my head, I'm drawing.
The call center is a new initiative for us right now, Mr. Burke, and it's not fully up and running, but it would be open in the morning until 7 at night.
Okay, that's good.
Given that we're able to get enough OPS staff to staff it.
Okay. And the FAFSA Fest, is that new this year also? Have we done that in the past?
We've done the FAFSA Fest in the past, but we only had one event. We're expanding it to several events this year.
I really applaud your efforts with the self-help, the self-serve function, and the email, or whatever you want to call it, the questions and answers. I went to a program where Connecticut tried this on a statewide basis, rather than each community college having their own call center. And I'm not even sure if something we ever want to even think about a consortium with Pasco Hernando or Manatee, or whatever Manatee's called now, and Hillsborough with some type of call center program for financial aid. Just an idea. I mean, I just thought I was fascinated that they did it on a statewide basis to because these call centers are this internet help where they want answers right away. I mean, they don't want to email and have an answer 3 days later. They want almost like that IMing back, how do I do this on the thing? So it's just maybe something we can look into as we advance along here, even form a consortium around. And the other item, Mr. Brett and I were at a meeting at the Seminole campus on the book issue, and I know, Tanja, you were there, and it came up about when the students get their Pell for their very first time, they don't have the money to pay for the books, and you don't get the Pell until a little bit later, because we have to make sure they're really students and are just not abusing the system which has taken place past nationally. So, but we make them then, we give them a loan basically to buy their books, but they have to get their books from the bookstore on campus rather than taking advantage of some of these less costly programs out there through the internet. And I just asked if you could possibly look to see if there's, and it's kind of odd that we're taking the students who can least afford it and not giving the opportunities for them to save money. And I realize we're helping them by advancing that book cost until we get the Pell money, from the way I understand the way.
That is correct.
But if we can actually look into that to see if we can offer them the alternative methods of getting books at a lower cost, that may be something which sound like it would be helpful. A few students, I think 2 students brought it up that day, and I'm sure there were only 50 students there. That would be magnified a lot throughout the campus.
If I could respond to that, Mr. Burke. What happened, we had students who felt that they wanted other options to getting their books instead of going to Follett's. And right now we have an agreement with Follett's that allows us to have sort of like a line of credit with them before the student has really received their aid. And we're waiting on the faculty to agree that they are actually attending class. And so Follett's, they're willing to take that risk with us and allow students to get the book line of credit at that time. To go outside of that, we would have to actually have awarded aid and have proof that they have attended all the courses to be able to get that. And so we have a good opportunity through Follett's. What another student brought up, and I believe, Dr. Duncan, it may have been at Tarpon or another site, was that they had borrowed money from their family to be able to shop around, and then when their Pell was awarded, they were able to pay them back. But we have a very good opportunity with Follett's right now to have that book line of credit before the aid has actually been awarded or determined.
You know, we approved something else today with the scholarship program for the with the Alumni Association, with the thrift store. Maybe that can get into a loan program for books early on to help those students, you know, as an alternative, you know, and where they get paid back when the financial aid comes in. Just a thought.
Mr. Chair, I'll be quick.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep this meeting. You did a great presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you and Dr. Williams both. I have a couple of comments, but also a couple of questions, and I'll make them very quick. I looked at when you were doing your presentation, you talked about the amount of staff that you have. Do you feel like you have enough staff on the front lines right now to meet the needs of the students that we have currently coming in the door?
No. I mean,
I figured that.
We can always use
I've seen some of the first couple of week kind of runs, and it seems to be there's a lot of back and forth. And I think now the systems and people are talking to each other a little bit more, from what I can tell. It seems to be working better, but I think ultimately you need probably bodies not at the epicenter, but out in the field where the students are to kind of respond to their questions. And I am 100% behind all the IT efforts and all of the help yourself stuff, but when people have problems, they come to our campuses. They don't stay on the computer frustrated forever. I mean, I didn't. When I was in college, you have a problem, you go over to Chrysler Hall, talk to somebody, and you thought you can get it resolved at Florida. So that was one of the questions. The other thing is, one of the questions that I get most from folks in the community is direct lending thing. I don't understand it. Granted, I don't do it every day, but I don't understand it. But the major question I get is, there's a mother, she's 21 years old, she's attending St. Petersburg College, she gets some type of lending program, and she has to have a cosigner. I think I talked to Dr. Williams about this before. I mean, I get stopped all the time. I'm like, I don't understand why you need a cosigner if you're an adult, you're going to college, and you're trying to maintain your family. Okay, go ahead, I'll let you
We have some wonderful news for you.
Thank you.
The leadership of Doug Duncan, we've been able to change our loans. I guess it's sort of like a short-term loan to NailNet, and we are no longer requiring the cosigner. The student they don't have to come in to get these loans. They can do them totally electronic, and they will be given about 60 days roughly to pay it back. So they do not need a cosigner anymore for the payment plan.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And finally, Mr. Burke, you talked about the default rate. I would tell you that the default rate probably has a lot more to do with where these colleges are located, number one, and number two, how many people they have in remediation programs. I think there's a direct correlation to those folks who are in remediation programs don't typically get past, that point. While we have those programs, I don't think students go to Tallahassee thinking they're going to get into Florida State, and they go to Gainesville to it's called Santa Fe College now?
Right. Yeah.
Santa Fe, thinking they're going to get into the University of Florida, but they have a bunch of remediation on the front end, and so a lot of failures happen there. They don't think going to happen, but they do.
Before I step down, I wanted to publicly thank Dr. Williams and Dr. Cooper for all their support since I came in. I would like Todd Smith to stand up and be recognized. Todd's our Director of Financial Assistance Services. He's been a wonderful colleague and friend. And I don't know what Nicole.
Good job.
But Wayne is away. And of Doug's staff, Nicole Dombrowski is our business analyst, which is helping us. Been a big help.
Very good.
You know what? One other thing, Mr. Brett. I guess since you answered the question that you don't have enough staff, is there a plan in place, or do you currently have a plan in place that you're bringing forward to either the trustees or to Dr. Furlong or whoever to make sure that we meet those needs or we grow to the point that we need to?
Mr. Givens, we're currently looking at our entire student affairs department as a whole. We just completed a 2-day enrollment, what we call it, enrollment management review to look at all the gaps and things going on in student affairs. And of course, financial aid is a part of that. And so we're working on a report to present to Dr. Furlong and Cabinet, and hopefully it'll flow up to you.
And I can, Mr. Chair. We have a couple opportunities in the short term. Long term, if we need 10 new positions, that's part of the budget process, and we're just getting started there, and it's not a very positive looking outlook to get started, but we take those and we relate them to other costs of the college. But in the non-position category, and OPS is one of the things they need, you remember you approved about a meeting ago us going with WorkNet to get that over $1 million and something like 90 positions that are all time limited until the federal money runs out, and several of those were that Tanja put on that list will provide some help here. And also, I've asked Tanja to put together a list of non-recurring needs for student services in general that we may want to address through the auxiliary budget from the textbooks. Since that's paid by students, we have a significant reserve. You asked me to take a look at that. And the main thing I've done at this point is ask Tanja to put it together. She's got a list. Now she's costing it out. So there are some things that may come forward. Some of them don't have to come forward. We can just do them. And but the new budget also will address the needs of financial aid. And we're just about to launch the budget process for next year.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you for your interest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank Dr. Duncan and Dr. White and Dr. Williams and Dr. Oliver, and those are the ones that I know that have been involved in the workshops on the textbooks. I went to the one at St. Pete Gibbs, and Mr. Burke and I were at the one at Seminole. I'm not sure if any of the other trustees made it to the others. Have they all happened yet?
No,
one more? Okay. Very, very impressive, though. The two that I was at, there was probably 50 to 60 students at each one. Really good questions, tough questions. Good ideas, too. And so I commend you for putting that together. I think it was very effective. And I mentioned to Dr. Furlong the other day that hopefully when these workshops are completed, we're going to reconvene and come up with some hard answers and some really good direction on how to move forward. So I appreciate you all putting that together. Dr. Furlong, is there any other business from you?
I just would mention 3 quick things. We sent you a copy of it, but I just want to, talking about commendations, I want to commend the legal office and particularly Pam Smith for putting together our so-called EAO report, which came back from DOE. And Sid and I used to sit in the office next to that office in DOE, and it's a tough group, and we got basically a commendation.
Good.
Where we could have gotten a list of things to do.
Great.
So that turned out well, and a lot of people, Patty and a lot of people at the college worked on that. Secondly, I wanted to mention, well, I mentioned the financial aid point already. The other thing I wanted to mention was Haiti. And we're going to talk about this in some detail at a future meeting, but just so you know, because there's a lot in the press, we've broken that into two parts, and the one part is response to what's going on in the earthquake, which happened in the middle of our other project. And I've asked Tanja to take the lead on that, and I'm away from the mic. I asked Tanja to take the lead on that, and I got her in touch with the governor's office. I thought the best way to respond to that, instead of being all over the place, was to link in with the governor's effort and to do it through our students. That way we wouldn't run into this mission issue that we talked about on the other projects. And she's done a great job. The governor's chief of staff, who I dealt with, then called her directly and put her in touch with the person who's running the Haiti initiative for the governor. 4 or 5 different areas, from helping with Creole language to getting the word out to our students. If they contribute, here's a respectable site to contribute to. Our O&P program, orthotics program, had some possibilities that the Haiti had asked about through the governor's office, and we're linked in there with our bachelor programs. So we've got a number of things underway if anybody asks you in the community. And then the other side was the long term that we had been working on, and Janet Long and Ann Cooper and others are working on a list. We've dropped off about 1/3 of what was on the original plan, and when we get the top 2/3 finalized, we'll bring it to you for discussion. And it's areas like working with Haiti long-term on emergency management services, fire training, so areas that orthotics, areas that relate to the mission of the college in terms of academics. So I think when it comes back, you'll see that reflected. And several of you individually had mentioned to me things to note, how you wanted to approach that. So we'll have the short term, which we're doing a lot on,